Hi, my name is Heather Skoglund, and this is my debate on why the United States should be military involved in the Middle East for POS 160. To start, military involvement in the Middle East has been a highly controversial topic for a very long time. After all, the United States has had a foothold there since the Truman administration in the 1940s. A variety of reasons were the determining factors in different administrations' involvement for the past, presidencies since Truman. But one thing does remain clear: the United States is involved for better or for worse. And at this point, the United States simply can't afford to withdraw. The US is the lone superpower in the world. And that means that the US is the only nation that can initiate global action with the help of our allies to address and solve crises and even to enforce order sometimes. If we left now, the Middle East would be at their own devices and would be at the mercy of unstable governments and terrorist groups like ISIS. Further, the US has the most tools out of any country in its arsenal to bring into a conflict. These include, but are not limited to, diplomatic strength, the economy, logistical practices, and technological methods like military things. With these different strategies, we can find numerous ways to bring about a positive outcome in the Middle East. Another, quote, weapon that the United States has is the coalition it has created between 40 Western and Arab countries. With a unified front of this magnitude, positive change is definitely a possibility if all these countries work together. A strong coalition of strong countries shows that there is still reason to be involved in the Middle East. Another reason to be involved in the Middle East is the extreme humanitarian threat that terrorist groups, especially ISIS in recent years, poses, not only to the United States but to the rest of the world. Their reach, as we have seen, has landed far outside of their main countries of Syria and Iraq, which is where their main base is. According to an article by CNN, quote, about 143 attacks in 29 countries have killed 2,043 people. These attacks have only been occurring since 2014, and yet 2,000 people have died over the course of 4 years. This is a threat of not only national security, but global security as well. Moreover, individuals in countries far from the Middle East have participated in terrorist attacks. A well-known example of this is the attack on the Pulse nightclub in Florida in June of 2016, in which 49 people were killed. Authorities confirmed that while the shooter, Omar Mateen, was not technically part of ISIS, he was inspired by them and wanted to show his devotion by committing this terrible crime. Actions like this have been seen all over the world, which presents a danger to the United States and its allies. Another point to make is not only the attacks on outside countries, but also what ISIS is doing in their own territory, which involves the brutal killing of their own people and individuals of foreign countries alike. There was a time a few years back in which ISIS televised the brutal beheading of journalist James Foley, saying that they would kill another American if the US didn't leave Iraq. Obviously, if we went along with what they wish, ISIS would take over the entire Middle East, which is something that we do not want. And the only way to stop these actions from occurring again and to stop an ISIS takeover would be to stay in the Middle East and work to defeat the group. If the United States took an isolationist approach, like many people argue we should, ISIS would definitely take control of many more countries in that region, and attacks on other countries would escalate to a likely unprecedented level. Another point I would like to make is the point that of United States interests in the Middle East. These interests are numerous and have a profound impact on how the United States deals with issues that arise. The first interest, obviously, is oil, as everyone knows. According to an article I read from Forbes magazine, quote, Saudi Arabia is the second largest source of U.S. crude oil imports, supplying 1.1 million BPD in 2015. This represented 14.3% of U.S. crude imports. This means that Saudi Arabia plays a large role in oil imports in the United States, making it a valued interest that must be protected. Iraq is also becoming a main player in the oil industry. Obviously, the United States will want to get involved in Iraq's oil industry because prices will be cheaper across the board in order for Iraq to compete with countries that export oil as well, which would boost our economy in numerous ways. Allies in the Middle East are another motivating factor in the argument for the U.S. to stay in the region. According to an article by Washington Post, there are more allies in the Middle East than a lot of people think. The strongest ally we have is Turkey, and this is because they are a part of NATO. Obviously, a large part of NATO is protecting countries that are in the alliance, which the United States has taken actions to do, including sending troops to help defend the border that Turkey shares with Syria. Other allies that the article labeled as non-major non-NATO allies are Jordan, Egypt, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Morocco. These countries, as you know, given in the name, are not part of NATO, but the United States still has a good relationship with them, and we want to keep that going. Staying in the Middle East ensures our protection of these countries and also ensures that these countries are likely to aid in our missions in the Middle East. Another interest that the U.S. has is ensuring the creation and sustentation of newly democratic governments. The biggest case for this is Iraq, a newly democratic country. The U.S. is heavily involved in helping to build up Iraq as a strong government that can inspire other countries to follow the democratic path. Currently, troops stationed in Iraq are assisting in training the Iraqi armies in things like counterterrorism, border security, and policing. Although a fully democratic government there still has a long way to go, and the current government is still fragile and imperfect, it is a huge motivating reason for the U.S. to remain involved in the Middle East. So overall, the U.S. should stay military involved in the Middle East in order to counter terrorism, promote democracy, protect numerous interests, and also because we are the strongest nation that has the most power and tools to enforce positive outcomes in the region.